again, my little yarnivores and spiderettes. Fiber Spider back again with another tutorial just for you. Thank you for joining me today. Hope you're all doing great. And, well, today we have got ourselves a Tunisian lace mesh shawl. In fact, we're going to be doing 2 variations. Very excited, and also excited to say that, yes, today's video is sponsored by Lion Brand. Thank you ever so much for your continued support. I really appreciate it. Now on with the details. Okay, so because we're going to be holding a lot of stitches on our Tunisian hook, you are going to need a Tunisian hook with a cord. Definitely one that is longer for the second one, but for this first one, you are going to need a hook with a cord. This one is a size J, which is a 6mm hook. You can, of course, use whatever works best for you. If nothing else, I would suggest use a hook at least a size or 2 bigger than you would typically use for the weight of yarn. This particular yarn is Lion Brand's Mandala, which I absolutely love their colorways. This particular colorway is the colorway of Groot, and it is about 590 yards, a weight of 3, and 100% acrylic. Now, they say that the recommended hook size, my vision is failing me, is a size H. I'm using a J. I went up 2 hook sizes, and it worked out rather well for me. But use what works best for you, by all means. Okay. Also, for this shawl, I used about 1 of these particular cakes. Now, for my other piece, which this one is done side to side. It starts at one tip and works its way, and this is the bind off edge here. Now, the other piece that I did was a top-down variation, and it looks like this. Absolutely gorgeousness. And so this one starts all the way up here at the middle of the neckline, and you work your way down, so on and so forth. Now, this particular piece, this one was done with the Lion Brand's Mandala bonus bundle, and it was in the colorway of Meowth. And this is also a weight of 3. However, you get a lot more yardage with the bonus bundle. This is 1,181 yards. Same weight, same fiber content. And this one, I still had a fair amount of yarn left over. I had this left over after completing my shawl. So I'm going to be using some more of this today. And, well, without further ado, let's get started, shall we? Okay. Okie dokie. So we are going to start with the diagonal on the bias version first because it is a little bit easier. I'm going to warm you up to the top-down one. Also, of course, the timestamps are in the description box as always. So for row 1 of our first example, if you will, going to start off with our obligatory slip knot. By the way, I took the cord off because initially, we don't have that many stitches on our hook in the beginning, but you will need one. So after doing our slip knot there, going to chain 2. Now, working into the first chain, insert your hook, pull up a loop, then chain 2. And you want to go a little bit loosely when doing this because we're going to have to work into the chain on the return pass. So chaining up 2, and then pull through both loops on your hook. And that, believe it or not, that is our first row. Okay, row 2, things are going to start to pick up a little bit. So for row 2, start off by chaining up 1, Then into the ring that we created, into that space, insert your hook, pull up a loop, and chain 1. And then, to finish up the row, into the second chain from the bottom. It's a little bit tricky, but it is worth doing. Going into that second chain, try to get underneath both loops on the edge here. There we go, underneath both loops. Grab your yarn, pull up a loop, chain up 2, 1, and 2, then pull through 2 loops, chain 1, and pull through 2 loops. All right, and then row 3, I would say row 3 is the official 1 row repeat, if you will. So let's get to that. Okay, so for row 3, again, going to start off by chaining up 1 into that first space, insert your hook, pull up a loop, chain up 1. Then into the next stitch, we're not going to do a Tunisian simple stitch, which is going around the bar like this. No, instead, we're going to be basically doing a Tunisian knit stitch. So we're going to go through the bar to the back of the work, grab the yarn, pull up a loop, chain up 1. And then again into the second chain from the bottom, go underneath 2 of those loops on that last chain there. There we go. Pull up a loop, chain 2, then pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, and pull through 2 loops. So you can see it is slowly but gradually getting there and growing. And so this right here, that finishing edge, that is one of the bottom sides of our triangular shaped shawl. And this is one of the points. You know, this is our neckline here, and this is the bottom point. Now, it doesn't look like much now, but it will get there. You know, if you keep at it and you keep going and you keep doing, you know, it will get there. So let's do a couple of repeat rows, and then I'll show you how to bind this off. Okay, so at this point, we're essentially repeating row 3. So as per usual, start by chaining up 1, then going into this space here, pull up a loop, chain up 1, then going into the next stitch, in between those 2 bars towards the back, pull up a loop, and chain up 1. And it gives you this really nice sort of knitted look to your stitches. And then going into the next, to the back, do a Tunisian knit stitch, pull up a loop, chain up 1. Then again, second chain from the bottom, go underneath 2 of those loops, pull up a loop, chain up 2, 1, 2, then pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops. So it sort of creates a nice, light, lacy, meshy bit of goodness there. Let's do another row or two. So chain up one into that first chain space, and you only do this in the first chain space. You pull up a loop, you chain one, then you go into the next stitch, pull up a loop, chain one, going to the next stitch, pull up a loop, chain one, going into the next stitch, pull up a loop, chain one. Then again, second chain from the bottom, going into that chain, pull up a loop, chain two, and pull through both loops, chain one, pull through both loops, chain one, pull through both loops, chain one, pull through two loops, chain one, and pull through two loops. Now, the reason why you only want to do your additional stitch in that first space there is because we're only going to be increasing one stitch per row. And when I say row, I mean the forward pass and the return pass. You're just increasing by one stitch. And that is what gives it this beautiful shape. So let's do one more, and then I'll show you the bind off. Okay? Excuse me. I got a little bit of the sniffles here today. Start by chaining up one, going into that first space, pull up a loop, chain one, going into that first stitch there, go through with a knit, Tunisian knit stitch, and chain one, going into the next stitch, pull up a loop, chain one, next stitch, pull up a loop, chain one, next stitch, pull up a loop, chain one, second chain from the bottom, go in there, pull up a loop, chain two, one and two, then pull through two loops, chain one, pull through two loops, chain one, pull through two loops, chain one, through two loops, chain one, through two loops, chain one, through two loops, and there you go. So yeah, you just keep going, going, going until your piece is big enough. And now I'm going to show you the bind off. Okay, so now for the bind off. When your piece is as big as you want it to be, is this step entirely necessary? No, but I think it sort of polishes the edge just a little bit, makes it look just a little more substantial. So, going to start by going into this first space here and pull up a loop, and then pull that first loop through the second loop. Now before we were going and doing knit stitches going through to the back. In this case, we're going to go with more the Tunisian simple stitch route, going through the front of the bar, pulling up a loop, and then pull the first through the second, and then going into the space, pull up a loop, first through the second, through the bar, pull up a loop, first through the second, into the space, pull up a loop, first through the second, through the bar, pull up a loop, first through the second, into the space, pull up a loop, first through the second, under the bar, pull up a loop, first through the second, into the space, pull up a loop, first through the second, into the bar, pull up a loop, first through the second, into the space. Can't forget about this last space. Pull up a loop, first through the second, and then, as per usual, into that second chain from the bottom, pull up a loop, first through the second. And there you go. So this is just a little extra something for your edge. Is it entirely necessary? No, but that's why I like to tell you, that it is something that you can do should you choose to do so. So this is the diagonal on the bias version. And, well, now let's get to the top-down version. Okay, so now for the top-down version, where instead of just doing one increase per row, we're going to be doing a total of 4 increases per row, 1 at either edge and 2 in the center spine. So that's why I wanted to give you a bit of a warm-up first. Now we're going to be, bringing out the big guns, so to speak. All right, so for the first row, I'm going to start, as per usual, with our slip knot, nothing new there, and a chaining of 2 once again. So chain 2. Now, into that first chain, going in, pulling up a loop, and chain 1, and do it again, going into that first chain, pull up a loop, and chain 1. So we've got 3 stitches. We need a total of 5. Going into that same chain again, pulling up a loop, chain 1, and then going in again for the 5th, pulling up a loop, chain 2, 1, 2, there we are, and then pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops. So we have 5 posts, or stitches, if you will. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 at the end there. And well, that's it for row 1, and I'm going to get you to probably about like row 3, and that's essentially when the actual repeats start. So let's press on, shall we? Okay, row 2, going to begin very similarly to how we did in the previous example. Start off by chaining up 1 into the space, going in and pulling up a loop, chain 1, knit stitch into the next stitch, so through the bar to the back, pull up a loop, chain up 1, into the space, pull up a loop, chain up 1, knit stitch in the next stitch, to the back, pull up a loop, chain up 1, into the next space, pull up a loop, chain up 1, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, chain up 1, into the next space, pull up a loop, chain up 1, and then kind of got to scoot your stitches over a little bit, but into that second chain, going in to that stitch, pull up a loop, chain 2, 1 and 2, and then pull through 2 loops, chain 1, 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 pull through 2, chain 1, pull through 2, chain 1, pull through 2, there we go, chain 1, and pull through 2. There you are. And so if you sort of splay out your stitches a little bit, this stitch, dead center, this is going to be our center spine. Very, very important stitch indeed. You can put a little scrap of yarn or a stitch marker or what have you so that you know this is your center spine. It will come into play in subsequent rows, or you can eventually get an eyeball feel for where that stitch is. And there are identifiers that I will point out as well, but that is our most important stitch for all of the future rows. But you can already see it's sort of splaying out very nicely. It looks very rounded at the moment, but it's early days. So let's continue on, shall we? Okay, so for row 3, as I said, things are going to change just a little bit, and we're going to get more solidified in the repeat. So for row 3, start off by chaining up 1. Then, as I mentioned before, we need an increase on this point, and 2 in the center. So after doing our chaining up of 1, going into that first space, pull up a loop, and chain up 1. Then going to go into this first stitch, pull up a loop, chain up 1, going into the next stitch, pull up a loop, chain up 1. We're not there yet, we're almost there. Going into the next stitch, and pulling up a loop, chaining up 1. Okay, so now this is the center spine, and we need to increase on either side of the spine, and we also need to do the spine itself, okay? So into the space, pull up a loop, chain up 1, then into the center spine, going into that stitch, pulling up a loop, chaining up 1, going into the next space, pull up a loop, chain 1, then, well, just a couple of stitches, so going into the next stitch, pull up a loop, chain 1, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, chain 1, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, chain 1. Now, into the last space. Very important. Do not forget to increase at the end here. So into the last space, going into that space, pull up a loop, chain 1, and then last but not least, the end stitch. So second chain from the bottom, going in, pulling up a loop, chain 2, there we are, and then pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1. Very humid day, my yarn is sticking to me. And then pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2, chain 1, pull through 2, chain 1, pull through 2. I do apologize if you can hear my tummy rumbling and grumbling and gurgling. I did have a bit of a snack so that my blood sugar would be sufficient for the video, so if you hear my tummy being disagreeable, you can tell him to shut up. I do apologize. Chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2, chain 1, pull through 2. There we are. And that is the end of row 3. So as you can see, it is coming into its own. Now, these 2 stitches that we increased, those are a great way of sort of demarcating that center spine stitch and finding it in future rows. But there you go. So we're going to do a couple more of these rows, and I think I'm going to actually attach my cord now because it's just going to get bigger and bigger from here on in. So let's do some repeats, shall we? Okay, so row 3 for the repeat for all intents and purposes. Going to start off, as per usual, by chaining up 1, then into the first space, going in and pulling up a loop, and chaining up 1, then going into the stitches until we are about at the center spine. So we got a couple of them to do, so into the stitch, pull up a loop, chain up 1, into the next, pull up a loop, and chain 1. Next, pull up a loop, chain 1, into the next, pull up a loop, chain 1. Don't forget that chain 1. It gives us the height that we need. And we're almost there. I just need to do this 1 stitch here, and then we can do our increase for the center. So into this stitch, pull up a loop, chain 1, and as you can see, we have our spine here with 2 stitches on either side. So into the space, pull up a loop, chain 1, into the center spine stitch, going in, pulling up a loop, and chaining 1, into the next space, pull up a loop, chain 1, then stitches all the way down until that last space. So into the stitch, pull up, chain 1, next stitch, pull up, chain 1, pull up, chain 1, pull up, chain 1, one more. Should I get that closer? All right, into that stitch, pull up a loop, chain 1. Now, the last space, do not forget, very important. Going into that space, pulling up a loop, chaining 1, then second chain from the bottom, going into that last stitch there, and pulling up a loop, chain 2, 1, and 2, then pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2 loops, chain 1, pull through 2, 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 and so on and so forth until we reach the end of the row. And that is really all there is to it. It is a beautiful thing how simple it is once you get into the groove. Just a couple more. And there. Ta-da! And then, of course, you can pull out your loop a little bit and check out the beautiful progress that you have made. And there you are. And like I said before, just keep in mind where your center spine is. You can, of course, put in a little stitch marker, nothing against that. If it helps you get the job done, do it. Totally fine. And so the bind off for this is really exactly the same as the other version that I showed you, but I'm going to show you right now anyway, so let's do it. Okay, so after working your piece as large as you want it to be, you are then ready for the bind off. It is, like I said, the exact same thing that we've done previously, but hey, I like to be thorough. I like spending time with you guys. So I'm going to start off by going into this first space right here and pulling up a loop, then first loop through the second, then going under the bar, pulling up a loop, first through the second, into the space, pulling up a loop, first through the second, under the bar, pulling up a loop, first through the second, into the space, pulling up a loop, first through the second, under the bar, pulling up a loop, first through the second. And just keep doing this all the way across. It's that easy. And when you are doing this, you do want to be a little bit loose so that your edge does not buckle on you. You want it to have some flow. So do not approach this with a death grip, which is a lesson for me of all people. Believe you me, I have this fabulous tendency of always stitching too tightly. I don't know, maybe it's repressed anxiety. I don't know, I just work here. At any rate, just going to work my way across until we reach to the end, and then there you are. Just a couple more. It works so quickly. And don't forget this last loop. Can't forget that last space. And then into the last stitch, it's that second chain from the bottom, and pull up a loop, first through the second, and you are done. You can cut your yarn, sew in your ends, and there you are. Now, yes, right now it definitely has very much a sort of half circle crescent-like shape, but the more you keep at it, the fact that you're only increasing at this tip and these tips here, it will become more pronounced and these sides will become more defined. But yeah, it's really that easy. And there you go. Alrighty, my dears, so that concludes today's tutorial on the Tunisian mesh shawl. Whether it is from side to side or top down, whatever tickles your fancy. Really hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, please give a little thumbs up button down below. You know that I appreciate your appreciation as always, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate Lion Brand so very much for sponsoring today's video. Thank you again. I really appreciate it. And as always, you know what to do until next time, right? I want all of you to stay inspired, stay caffeinated, stay stitching, and please stay safe. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now, everybody, and have a great day.